In the early 1970s, the United States was a nation in turmoil. Trust in institutions was collapsing. Protests filled the streets, and questions about power, obedience, and authority were everywhere. A young psychology professor named Philip Zimbardo believed he could answer one of the most unsettling questions of all. Do people become cruel because they are inherently evil, or because the system allows them to be? To find out, he designed an experiment that seemed simple on the surface. 24 mentally healthy college students were recruited through a newspaper ad. They were promised payment and told it was a study about prison life. What they were not prepared for was how real it would all become. The prison was constructed in the basement of Stanford University's psychology department. Classrooms were converted into cells. Closets became isolation units. Doors were reinforced with steel bars. Half of the volunteers were randomly assigned to be guards. The other half became prisoners. None of them had criminal records or violent histories. They were just ordinary young men. The guards were given uniforms, whistles, and mirrored sunglasses to prevent any eye contact. The prisoners were stripped of their names and given numbers. From the very first day, the atmosphere began to shift in a way no one could have predicted. The experiment began with a shocking dose of reality. The prisoners were arrested at their homes by real police officers. They were handcuffed, read their rights, and placed into squad cars. Neighbors watched from their windows, believing it was a genuine arrest. Inside the mock prison, the prisoners were searched, deloused, and forced to wear simple smocks instead of their own clothes. Each man was no longer a person. He was now just a number. What followed wasn't physical violence, at least not at first. It was something quieter, more insidious. It was humiliation, control, and psychological dominance. And the guards, given almost no instructions, were beginning to improvise. By the second day, the guards began enforcing rules that had never existed. They used push-ups as punishment. They deprived prisoners of sleep. They hurled verbal insults. No one had told them to do this. They chose to. The dynamic was fascinating. Some guards became passive observers, watching from the sidelines. But others, they began to truly enjoy their newfound authority. One guard in particular became infamous for his cruelty. He would wake prisoners in the middle of the night for pointless roll calls, force them to clean toilets with their bare hands, and isolate them for hours on end. The prisoners, stripped of their identity, began to crack under the pressure. The breaking point arrived with stunning speed. Within just 36 hours, the first prisoner suffered a complete mental breakdown. He was crying, screaming, consumed by uncontrollable rage. At first, the researchers believed he was faking it, just trying to get out of the study. But when he was finally released, it was clear the psychological damage was very real. Soon after, another prisoner followed, and then another. Some became withdrawn and zombie-like, while others showed clear signs of acute anxiety and depression. The carefully planned experiment was unraveling, spiraling out of control. And yet, it continued. As the days passed, the line between simulation and reality blurred completely. The guards' cruelty escalated. Food was withheld as a form of punishment. Access to the bathroom became a privilege, not a right. In one of the most disturbing turns, prisoners were forced to simulate sexual acts to humiliate them. While no physical assault was officially recorded, the psychological harm was undeniable and growing by the hour. What made the situation even worse was that the researchers themselves had lost their objectivity. Philip Zimbardo, the lead scientist, had stopped being an observer. He had fully assumed the role of the prison superintendent, and the experiment had completely consumed him. So, why didn't anyone stop it? Visitors were allowed to observe the experiment. Parents, colleagues, even a priest came to see what was happening in the Stanford basement. Most of them said nothing. The environment somehow felt normal to them because everyone inside had accepted their assigned role. The guards were acting like guards. The prisoners were acting like prisoners. It wasn't until a young psychologist named Christina Maslick visited the prison that someone finally challenged the madness. She was horrified by what she saw. She confronted Zimbardo, her partner at the time, and asked him a simple, powerful question. What are you doing to these people? That night, the experiment was shut down. It had lasted only 6 days instead of the planned 14. The aftermath sent shockwaves through the world of psychology and beyond. The findings were used to explain real-world atrocities, the abuse in prisons, misconduct in the military, and brutality within police forces. It seemed to prove that good people could do terrible things when placed in a toxic situation. But years later, critics began asking harder questions. Were the guards truly acting naturally, or were they encouraged, even subtly, by the researchers to be aggressive? Did the experiment truly reveal the dark side of human nature, or did it simply manipulate it? Some participants later came forward, saying they felt pressure to behave in a certain aggressive way. Others claimed they suffered from long-term emotional trauma. The line between groundbreaking science and profound ethical failure had become dangerously blurred. Despite the intense controversy, the Stanford prison experiment is still taught in psychology classes today. While its meaning has shifted, it's no longer just a shocking demonstration of human behavior. It's a powerful lesson, a lesson about how quickly ordinary people can transform into something else entirely when they are given power. Without any accountability, it forces us to confront a question that still haunts our institutions today. Is abuse the result of a few bad individuals, the bad apples? Or is it the inevitable outcome of bad systems? The bad barrels, the basement prison at Stanford no longer exists. The walls were torn down and the cells were dismantled long ago. But the question at the heart of the experiment remains, echoing through the decades. If this could happen in a university basement with volunteers, under the constant observation of scientists, what happens in the real places no one is watching? What happens in the forgotten corners of prisons and isolated military outposts? In any situation where power goes unchecked, and the most chilling thought of all, how many times has it already happened? Thanks for watching. If this story made you think, consider subscribing for more deep dives into the human mind.